Imagine walking into a courtroom, expecting justice, only to be met with blatant disrespect. That's exactly what happened when a black woman, calm yet confident, stood before a judge who seemed determined to silence her. Without knowing who she really was, the judge denied her the chance to defend herself, dismissing her rights with a wave of arrogance. But here's the twist: the woman wasn't just any defendant. She was the newly appointed Chief Justice, one of the most powerful figures in the legal system. The room fell silent as the realization dawned, but the damage had already been done. This is a story about prejudice, power, and an unforgettable moment of reckoning. How did the judge react when the truth came to light? And what does this moment say about the justice system itself? Stay tuned for the full story. It's one you won't want to miss. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the judge, confident in his authority, continued to dismiss the woman's every attempt to speak. To him, she was just another face in a long day of hearings, someone he didn't deem worthy of respect or attention. But this wasn't her first time in a courtroom. Her poise and silence weren't from intimidation. They came from years of experience and a deep understanding of the very system that now seemed to fail her. Outside the courtroom, whispers began to circulate among a few attorneys and clerks who had recognized her. They exchanged knowing glances, wondering how long it would take for the judge to realize his grave mistake. Who was this woman beyond the title of Chief Justice? How had she risen to this position of power, and why was she standing there that day? As the judge carried on, completely unaware, the room held its breath, waiting for the moment the truth would shatter his assumptions. The judge leaned back in his chair, his tone growing sharper as he reprimanded the woman for what he perceived as defiance. To him, she was just another litigant wasting his time. He cut her off mid-sentence, ignoring her calm demeanor and the quiet authority in her voice. But as the moments ticked by, the murmurs in the gallery grew louder. A young clerk nervously approached a senior colleague and whispered, "Does he not know who she is?" The senior clerk, barely hiding a smirk, shook his head and whispered back, "Not yet." Meanwhile, the woman remained composed, her expression unreadable. She didn't argue or raise her voice. There was no need. She understood the weight of this moment and what it represented. It wasn't just about her. It was about a system that's so often judged by appearances rather than substance. In the corner of the room, a reporter scribbled furiously in a notebook, sensing the story of a lifetime unfolding before them. What would happen when the judge finally learned the truth? Would he apologize, or would his pride push him to double down? The tension in the room thickened, each second bringing the courtroom closer to an inevitable reckoning. The judge's voice grew firmer, his impatience now on full display. "You've been given enough chances to speak," he said sharply, tapping his gavel for emphasis. The room fell silent, except for the faint sound of pens scribbling from the gallery. All eyes were on the woman, but she remained composed, her calm exterior unshaken by the escalating tension. Behind her, a few people exchanged glances, their faces a mix of disbelief and anticipation. One lawyer leaned toward another and whispered, "He still doesn't realize. This is going to blow up." The other nodded, their expression caught between amusement and secondhand embarrassment. The woman finally raised her eyes to meet the judge's, her gaze steady and unwavering. The judge, oblivious to the significance of the moment, glared back, interpreting her calmness as arrogance. "If you cannot follow the rules of this court, you'll be removed," he threatened. The atmosphere was electric, every person in the room bracing for what was about to happen. Whispers turned into a faint hum of speculation as the judge flipped through his papers, still trying to assert control. But the woman didn't need to argue or shout. The weight of her identity alone was about to tip the scales. Everyone in the courtroom could feel it. The truth was moments away from being revealed, and when it came, there would be no going back. As the judge sat towering over the courtroom, his authority unwavering in his mind, he leaned forward and called for order, oblivious to the rising tension around him. Just then, a bailiff hesitated at the doorway, clutching a file that had just been rushed in. He walked briskly toward the bench and whispered something to the judge. For a moment, the judge's expression faltered, his confident demeanor cracking slightly as he glanced down at the file now placed before him. The woman stood silent, watching intently, her presence commanding without a single word. The judge flipped through the documents, and his face turned pale as he read the words stamped across the top, Chief Justice. He looked up, his eyes darting between the woman and the courtroom gallery, realizing far too late the magnitude of his error. But before he could address her, the woman calmly spoke, her voice cutting through the room with measured precision. "Do you now see the irony in denying someone their voice, Judge?" she asked, her tone both steady and piercing. Just as the room began to buzz with murmurs, a sharp knock echoed from the back of the courtroom. All heads turned as a high-ranking official entered, carrying an air of urgency. The newcomer's expression was unreadable, but it was clear they weren't here as a spectator. Suddenly, the focus shifted. Not only had the judge's actions been exposed, but now an unseen layer of complexity had been introduced. What was this official's role in the unfolding drama? And how would this unexpected arrival alter the course of events? The stakes had just been raised, and the room braced for what was coming next. The courtroom was silent, every eye shifting between the judge, the woman, and the high-ranking official who had just entered. The tension hung heavy as the official approached the bench, handing the judge another sealed envelope. The judge's hands trembled slightly as he opened it and read the contents. His face, already pale, seemed to drain of all remaining color. The woman, still calm and composed, stood waiting. She hadn't come to seek an apology or to prove a point. Her presence alone had already done that. But as the judge hesitated, fumbling for words, the official turned to address the court. "This is Chief Justice Evelyn Marks," the official declared, their voice firm and unwavering. "She came here today to observe, but what she witnessed is a blatant disregard for the principles of justice we are sworn to uphold." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge stammered, attempting to justify his actions, but the damage was done. Chief Justice Marks stepped forward, her voice steady but sharp. "You judged me before I even spoke. That is not justice. It's prejudice. And it's exactly why I'm here, to ensure this system becomes what it claims to be, fair and impartial." Just as it seemed the moment had reached its peak, the official added one final twist. "This case and your conduct today will be reviewed by the Judicial Oversight Committee immediately." The judge's face fell as the weight of the consequences settled in. The woman turned and walked out, her quiet dignity leaving a mark far deeper than anger ever could. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, but one thing was clear. Justice had not only been served, it had been redefined. As Chief Justice Marks left the courtroom, the weight of the moment lingered in the air. The judge sat in silence, grappling with the fallout of his actions. Whispers of the event spread quickly, both inside and outside the courthouse, as people reflected on what had just unfolded. For many, it was a wake-up call, a reminder of how deeply ingrained biases could blind even those tasked with upholding justice. Outside the building, reporters gathered, eager for a statement, but Chief Justice Marks didn't stop to address them. Her actions had already spoken louder than any words. In her quiet yet powerful way, she had exposed a system flaw that couldn't be ignored. The story didn't end in that courtroom. Conversations began across the legal community about accountability and fairness, spurred by the very example she set. And as she walked away, One thing was clear: change had already begun.